The streets have rules. But in Southern California, those rules don't come from the police. They come from the Mexican Mafia. For decades, La M has controlled the Sureño gangs from behind prison walls, enforcing strict laws that dictate who can sell drugs, who can fight, and who lives or dies. Break these rules, and you're not just breaking the code. You're signing your own death warrant. Tonight, we break down the secret rules that control the streets and the power La M holds over those who dare to disobey. The Mexican Mafia, La M, has established a set of rules and expectations that many Southern California street gangs, Sureños, must follow to maintain their standing and avoid violent repercussions. These rules are not publicly codified, but have been shared through law enforcement reports, court cases, and former gang members' accounts. Here are some of the key rules. Rule number 1, respect. La M. The Mexican Mafia must always be shown respect. Any form of disrespect can result in violent retaliation. The Mexican Mafia, La M, operates under an extreme code of respect, and any perceived disrespect, whether intentional or not, can have violent, often fatal consequences. Disrespect toward La M can come in many forms, ranging from verbal slights to outright defiance. Below are some notable examples of individuals who violated this rule and what happened to them. Here are some examples of disrespect that got dealt with. Joe Morgan was a high-ranking member of the Mexican Mafia, despite being of Croatian descent. While Morgan was well respected, his position created internal conflicts. Some members believed a non-Mexican shouldn't hold so much power. Over time, these internal power struggles led to deep divisions within La M. Though Morgan remained powerful until his death from cancer in 1993, internal betrayals and tensions over leadership have resulted in multiple assassinations of members who challenged authority over the years. Manuel Rocky Luna, accused of disrespect and killed in prison, a former Mexican Mafia member. In 2013, Luna, who was in Pelican Bay State Prison, was suspected of violating La M's rules, though specific details remain undisclosed. He was stabbed to death in a high-security unit of the prison, an execution that reportedly had the approval of top La M leaders. Reputed La M members who spoke to law enforcement, breaking the code of silence. Who? Several former Mexican Mafia members, including Rene Boxer Enriquez and Raymond Hueroshi Shriok. What happened? Enriquez defected and began cooperating with law enforcement, revealing La M's operations. Others have done the same over the years. Consequence: those who cooperate are greenlit, marked for death by La M, while some, like Enriquez, have survived under witness protection. Others have been hunted down and killed. Unauthorized use of the IME name. What happened? There have been cases where gang members falsely claim Mexican Mafia affiliation or use the organization's name without permission. Consequence: those caught falsely representing La M are often subjected to beatings or execution orders. Unauthorized use of the name is considered a major act of disrespect, failure to pay tribute, taxation disrespect. Who? Local Sureño street gang leaders. What happened? Some Sureño gangs have refused to pay the required taxes to La M. This is considered an insult because it implies defiance. Consequence: the Mexican Mafia has ordered assassinations of street gang members who fail to pay or question their authority. In some cases, entire gangs have been green-lit, meaning any Sureño loyal to La M is expected to attack them. Disrespect in any form is met with extreme consequences. Punishments include murder, torture, or permanent exile from gang life. Even perceived disrespect, e.g., ignoring a direct order, can result in retaliation. Speaking to law enforcement or challenging La Eme's authority is essentially a death sentence. Rule number 2. Pay tribute. Taxation by La Eme. The Mexican Mafia, La Eme, enforces a strict taxation system on street gangs, primarily Sureños, who operate within its territories. This tribute is a major source of revenue for La Eme and is used to maintain control over both the streets and the prison system. The amount of tax varies depending on several factors, including 1. The type of business. The biggest sources of taxable income include drug sales. Meth, heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl are the primary money makers. Prostitution and human trafficking. Some street gangs run brothels or force women into sex work. Weapons sales. Some Sureño gangs deal in illegal firearms. Other hustles, extortion, stolen goods, and fraud are also taxed. 2. The gang's location and income. Larger, wealthier gangs pay higher amounts, while smaller crews contribute less. 3. Individual business owners. Even independent drug dealers, vendors, or businesses operating in La Eme-controlled neighborhoods may be required to pay a street tax for protection. Estimated tax rates. Mid-level drug dealers, $500 to $1,000 per month. High-volume drug suppliers, $5,000, $10,000 per month. Independent businesses, a percentage of total earnings, case by case. Failure to pay can result in a green light, execution order on individuals or even entire gangs. La Eme operates like a criminal syndicate, using a structured system to collect and funnel money. 1. The tax collector, the shot caller. Each Sureño gang under La Eme's control has a shot caller, leader, responsible for enforcing the rules, including tax collection. The shot caller is often a respected OG, older gang member, or a high-ranking soldier. This individual ensures that members or affiliated drug dealers pay their monthly dues. 2. Street-level collectors. Some gangs appoint lower-ranking members to collect tax from dealers and businesses. Collectors may also use intimidation tactics to ensure compliance. 3. Delivery to the next level. Once collected, the money is sent to a regional tax collector, who is usually a higher-ranking Sureño closely affiliated with La Eme. This person ensures that funds are properly counted and distributed. Since La Eme operates primarily from behind prison walls, collected money must be laundered and smuggled into the prison system. This happens in several ways: money orders and commissary deposits. Money is sent to inmates via third parties, often deposited into prison commissary accounts under different names. Some funds are funneled through family members or corrupt prison staff. Kite system, paper communications. Orders for where money should go are often delivered via kites, small secret notes. These notes are passed between inmates and sent outside through visitors or paroled gang members. Shell businesses and wire transfers. Some high-level La Eme members use fake businesses or cash businesses to launder money. Money may be wired or funneled through legitimate companies before being redirected to family members or trusted contacts. Cash deliveries. By trusted members, some funds are literally handed off in briefcases or envelopes to the families or associates of imprisoned leaders. The money collected through taxation is used to maintain control and fund La M's criminal empire, including prison protection and power, bribing corrupt prison staff for privileges, phones, drugs, weapons, funding hitmen inside prison to eliminate rivals or disobedient gang members, taking care of loyal members' commissary so they have food, supplies, and luxuries in prison. 2. Street-level operations, buying weapons and drugs for Sureño gangs, paying bail or legal fees for key members who get arrested, funding money laundering operations to glean dirty cash. 3. Taking care of La M families, supporting wives, children, and families of incarcerated members, sending money to loyal soldiers who are in prison but can't support themselves. 4. Kill orders and green lights, financing assassinations of rival gang members or informants, rewarding hitmen who carry out La M's orders. If a Sureño gang, drug dealer, or street-level operative fails to pay their tribute, La M enforces consequences. First warning, a verbal or written reminder, kite, to pay up. Second warning, a violent beating or disciplinary action, stabbing, torture. Final consequence, if a gang or individual repeatedly refuses to pay, they are put on the green light list, meaning any Sureño gang member is expected to kill them on sight. The Mexican Mafia's taxation system is one of the biggest reasons they remain so powerful. By controlling the money flow, they maintain dominance over Sureño gangs, keep a steady cash flow for operation inside and outside prison, ensure loyalty through financial incentives and fear. Rule number 3, no drive-by shootings. The Mexican Mafia, La M, enforces a strict no drive-by shootings rule for all Sureño gangs under its control. This rule was created to limit unnecessary attention from law enforcement, maintain control over gang violence, and enforce discipline among street gangs. The no drive-by rule was firmly established in the late 1990s and early 2000s, though the idea had been enforced unofficially for years before. By the 1980s and 1990s, drive-by shootings were extremely common in Los Angeles and Southern California, leading to high-profile cases of innocent civilians, children, and even off-duty law enforcement officers being killed. As the media and law enforcement began cracking down on gang violence, La M saw that uncontrolled street violence was hurting their drug business and attracting too much police attention. To protect their money flow and avoid heat, La M leaders declared that drive-by shootings would no longer be tolerated. Why was the no drive-by rule instituted? There were several key reasons. 1. Too much law enforcement attention. The FBI, LAPD, and ATF were cracking down hard on gang activity in the 1990s. High-profile drive-by murders led to RICO cases, which allowed law enforcement to charge entire organizations. La M did not want local street gangs bringing unnecessary heat to their drug empire. 2. Lack of control over violence. Drive-bys often resulted in innocent bystanders or unintended targets getting killed. La M wanted murders to be calculated and strategic, not reckless. Shooting from a moving car often led to missed targets, allowing rivals to survive and retaliate. 3. A better method. Walk-up shootings. Instead of chaotic drive-bys, La M began pushing for walk-up executions, or planned ambushes. This method ensured the target was killed while reducing the risk of killing civilians. Notable drive-by shootings that led to the rule. 1. 1992. The murder of 3-year-old Stephanie Kuchen. In 1992, a Mexican Mafia-affiliated gang, Avenues 43 in Highland Park, mistook a family's car for a rival gang's vehicle. Gang members opened fire, killing 3-year-old Stephanie Kuchen and severely injuring her family. The case caused national outrage, leading to a major LAPD crackdown on gang activity. La M saw this as bad for business. Unwanted media attention led to more arrests and surveillance. 2. 1993. The killing of an off-duty LAPD officer in a drive-by. A Sureño gang member unknowingly shot and killed an off-duty LAPD officer in a drive-by. The murder brought an intense police response, leading to mass arrests and raids in Sureño neighborhoods. This reinforced the idea that drive-bys were reckless and counterproductive for La M's goals. 3. 1995. Rampant drive-by shootings in Los Angeles. Multiple high-profile drive-by killings of children and civilians created public outrage. The California Gang Task Force launched Operation Community Shield, a program targeting Latino gangs. As La M watched its street enforcers get hit with RICO charges, the decision was made: drive-by shootings had to stop. When La M issues an order, gangs must follow it or suffer the consequences. Here are examples of gangs that ignored the rule and paid the price. 1. The Avenues Gang, 2000s. Greenlit by La M. The Avenues Gang, Highland Park, LA, was involved in multiple unauthorized drive-by shootings, including ones that hit civilians. La M issued a green light, kill order on several Avenues members who refused to follow orders. The FBI and LAPD intensified their investigations, leading to large-scale arrests and RICO charges that nearly wiped out the gang's leadership. 2. East Side Wilmas, 2004. Leaders were executed. East Side Wilmas, a Sureño gang in the harbor area of LA, ignored the drive-by rule and carried out a reckless shooting that hit civilians. La M responded by having 2 of the gang's leaders murdered. The message was clear: obey the rule or die. 3. Florencia 13, mid-2000s. Internal cleansing. Florencia 13, F13, a powerful Sureño gang, had members involved in unauthorized drive-bys. When the wrong people were hit, La M ordered internal discipline, meaning F13 leadership had to execute their own members to prove loyalty. Several F13 gang members disappeared or were found dead in gang-controlled areas. Has the no drive-by rule been a good thing? For La M? Yes, for the community. Mixed benefits for La M. Reduced law enforcement pressure. Fewer random killings meant less police heat. Increased gang discipline. It forced Sureño gangs to be more strategic and disciplined. Better business control. La M's drug trade thrived because the focus shifted from reckless violence to organized crime. Impact on the community shootings didn't stop, just changed. Instead of drive-bys, gangs carried out walk-up executions, kidnappings, and ambushes. Targeted killings increased. While fewer bystanders were killed, murders became more efficient and ruthless. Gangs became more organized and harder to dismantle. Since violence was now more strategic, law enforcement had a harder time proving gang connections. The no drive-by rule was a calculated move by La M to protect their business, reduce law enforcement pressure, and enforce discipline among Sureño gangs. While it did reduce reckless shootings, it did not reduce violence. Gang killings simply became more methodical and brutal. Rule number 5. Sureños must set aside rivalries under La M's authority. One of the most powerful and unnatural rules imposed by La M, Mexican Mafia, is that all Sureño gangs must put aside their rivalries when it comes to business and prison politics. Even if two Sureño gangs are at war on the streets, they are expected to operate under a unified structure inside prison and in matters concerning La M's interests. Do Sureños really have to set aside rivalries? Yes. When it comes to La M's authority, Sureños are expected to prioritize making money over personal beefs, respect the chain of command, even if it includes members of a rival gang, follow orders from La M without question, even if it benefits a rival. However, outside of La M's direct influence, rival Sureño gangs still feud and kill each other, just not in ways that disrupt La M's power structure. If two Sureños have personal issues with each other, the dispute must be handled in a controlled manner, not through reckless violence. How disputes are settled. 1. Mediated by a higher-up. If two Sureños from different gangs have an issue, the shot caller in charge, or an MA-affiliated leader, will mediate the situation. The goal is to prevent chaos that could interfere with La M's operations. 2. Sanctioned fights, regulated fades. In some cases, if two members refuse to let a beef go, they may be allowed a one-on-one sanctioned fight, fade, to settle the issue. This is only permitted if it does not interfere with business. 3. Direct orders, to drop the issue. If La M sees the dispute as unimportant, the members are ordered to move on, no exceptions. Disobeying this order can result in disciplinary action, up to execution. Are you expected to be friends with someone who killed a family member? No, friendship is not required, but discipline and obedience are. If La M orders peace, you must comply, even if your enemy has killed someone close to you. This is one of the most brutal and unnatural aspects of gang life under La M's rule. Members are often forced to coexist, work with, or even take orders from people who have killed their loved ones. Real examples of people setting aside feuds with those who hurt their family. Example 1. Joe Pegleg Morgan's control over feuds. Joe Pegleg Morgan, a high-ranking La M leader, often forced Sureño gangs to cooperate despite deep rivalries. One infamous case involved two members from Florencia 13 and 38th Street who had killed each other's family members. Morgan ordered them to work together in drug operations inside prison. Despite personal hatred, both followed orders because refusal meant death. Example 2. Green light, lifted on the Maravilla gangs. 2000s. The Maravilla gangs were green-lit, targeted for execution by La M for refusing to pay taxes. Years later, La M lifted the green light and ordered all Sureños to stop attacking Maravilla members. Many Sureños had lost family and close friends to the Maravilla beef, but were forced to obey. Example 3. Hood enemies sharing a yard in prison. In California prisons, members of Sureño gangs that are bitter enemies on the streets are often placed together in prison yards. Despite deep hatred, they are expected to follow La M's rules and avoid fighting unless given permission. Failure to comply leads to severe punishment from La M enforcers. What happens? If a Sureño refuses to set aside a rivalry, green light, kill order. If a Sureño keeps attacking a rival against orders, they risk being targeted by la M. Discipline, severe beatings or stabbings. Some Sureños who defied orders were stabbed multiple times, but left alive to send a warning. Excommunication from la M's protection. If a Sureño refuses to fall in line, they can be stripped of their rank and protection, making them a target for both their rivals and the authorities. The set-aside rivalries rule is one of the most difficult to accept for gang members, but it is a critical part of la M's control over the Sureño underworld. Even deep personal hatred must be ignored if la M demands it. Rule number 6. No unauthorized violence. All hits might be approved. One of the most surprising yet strictly enforced rules under la M is that Sureño gang members cannot engage in violence without permission, especially when it involves major acts like murder or attacks on rival gangs. This seems contradictory because gang life is rooted in violence. However, la M's rule is about controlling chaos, not eliminating violence. Every act of violence must serve a purpose, whether it's discipline, power, or profit. Gang violence is a fundamental part of street life. However, random, reckless, or unauthorized violence is seen as a liability. La M profits from structure, not chaos. A wild, disorganized war between Sureño gangs makes drug sales and extortion harder to control. Killing without permission can trigger unnecessary wars that disrupt la M's interests. Too much violence draws police attention, leading to RICO cases, crackdowns, and increased pressure on la M leadership in prison. Sureño gangs still fight and kill each other, but when la M is involved, the violence has to be strategic and approved. Rule number 6. No unauthorized violence. All hits must be approved. One of the most surprising yet strictly enforced rules under la M is that Sureño gang members cannot engage in violence without permission, especially when it involves major acts like murder or attacks on rival gangs. This seems contradictory because gang life is rooted in violence. However, la M's rule is about controlling chaos, not eliminating violence. Every act of violence must serve a purpose, whether it's discipline, power, or profit. Isn't gang violence an absolute norm? Yes, gang violence is a fundamental part of street life. However, random, reckless, or unauthorized violence is seen as a liability. La M profits from structure, not chaos. A wild, disorganized war between Sureño gangs makes drug sales and extortion harder to control. Killing without permission can trigger unnecessary wars that disrupt la M's interests. Too much violence draws police attention, leading to RICO cases, crackdowns, and increased pressure on la M leadership in prison. Sureño gangs still fight and kill each other, but when la M is involved, the violence has to be strategic and approved. How are hits and acts of violence approved? 1. Orders from high-ranking la M leaders. If a hit is ordered inside prison, it must be approved by a carnal, Mexican Mafia member and passed down through trusted messengers. 2. Street shot callers. Get permission. If a street-level gang wants to target a rival or attack someone, they must ask permission from their IME-affiliated shot caller. If it benefits la M, the green light is given. If not, it's denied. 3. Written or coded messages, kites. Many orders for violence come through small, hidden messages, kites, smuggled inside prisons. If a hit is not confirmed in writing, it is not approved. For La M decides who lives and who dies. Sometimes a gang wants to kill someone, but La M sees value in keeping them alive for money, connections, connections, or future use. In those cases, the kill order is denied, and disobeying that order is a death sentence. What happens if someone commits unauthorized violence? Immediate green light, kill order. If a Sureño kills or attacks without permission, they become a target. Discipline, beatings or stabbings. Unauthorized violence leads to punishment inside prison or on the streets. Excommunication from protection. If a Sureño goes rogue, they lose La M's backing and protection, making them vulnerable. Examples of unauthorized violence that backfired. Example 1. Unapproved retaliation war. Florencia 13 versus East Coast Crips, 2000s. Members of Florencia 13, F13, started a war with the East Coast Crips over drug turf without La M's approval. The violence got so out of control that it drew major police attention, FBI involvement, and multiple arrests of La M-connected members. La M leaders in prison were furious that the violence had disrupted their business. Some F13 members responsible were green-lit, killed, for acting without authorization. Example 2. Unauthorized hit on a connected drug dealer, 1999, Los Angeles. A Sureño gang member killed a local drug dealer without realizing the dealer was paying taxes to La M. Since the victim was profitable to La M, his killer was marked for death as punishment for disrupting business. A week later, the gang member was stabbed to death in prison as a warning to others. Example 3. Green light denied, but the hit happened anyway. In 2015, a Sureño gang wanted to kill an ex-member they suspected was cooperating with law enforcement. The gang's shot caller asked La M for permission. The request was denied because La M wanted to use the ex-member for drug connections. The gang ignored the denial and killed him anyway. As a result, the gang members responsible were targeted for violating orders. Does this rule benefit La M? Yes. Controlling violence makes La M more powerful. Less heat from law enforcement equals more stability for drug and extortion operations. Prevents reckless feuds that could destroy profitable street alliances. Strengthens La M's authority. No one acts without their approval. The rule against unauthorized violence doesn't mean Sureños aren't violent. It means their violence must be controlled and strategic. La M is not against killing. They just want full control over who dies and when. Rule number 7. No cooperating with law enforcement. Snitching is a death sentence. One of the most absolute and unforgivable rules of La M is that no member or associate can cooperate with law enforcement under any circumstance. Snitching, whether it's testifying in court, giving information to police, or even being suspected of cooperating, carries a mandatory death sentence. Unlike some street gang rules that can be bent, La M enforces this one with brutal efficiency. Why is this rule so important? Loyalty is everything. La M's power is built on complete obedience and secrecy. Snitches bring down organizations. Many major cases against La M have only succeeded because someone talked. Fear keeps everyone in line. If snitches are guaranteed death, fewer people take the risk of betraying La M. Even high-ranking members who have been with La M for decades are not exempt. If they're caught talking, they're as good as dead. Real examples of high-ranking La M members who broke this rule. Example 1. René Boxer Enriquez turned informant in 2003. Who? René Boxer Enriquez, a highly respected La M leader. What happened? After rising to power in La M, Boxer flipped in 2003 and became a government witness. Why did he snitch? He saw La M's internal betrayals and realized he was expendable. The consequences: he was immediately green-lit for death by La M. Outcome: he testified against La M leaders and helped convict multiple members. He remains in protective custody to this day. Example 2. Ramon Mundo Mendoza flipped in the late 1970s. Who? Ramon Mundo Mendoza, one of La M's most feared early enforcers. What happened? After being locked up, he turned on La M in the late 1970s. Why did he snitch? He realized that La M would eventually betray him, and he feared for his own life. The consequences: Mundo became one of the first major informants to expose La M's structure. Outcome: he entered witness protection and has been in hiding ever since. If found, he would be killed on sight. Example 3. Alberto Beto Marquez, executed in 1991 for snitching. Who? Alberto Beto Marquez, an MA associate based in California. What happened? He was caught providing information to law enforcement. The consequences: La M ordered a hit, and he was stabbed to death in 1991. Outcome: his death was used as a warning to others. Example 4. Alex Pee-wee Aguirre, murdered in 1993 for suspected cooperation. Who? Alex Pee-wee Aguirre, a respected Sureño with MA connections. What happened? He was suspected of cooperating, even though there was no solid proof. The consequences: La MA leaders didn't take chances. They ordered his execution. Outcome: he was stabbed 30+ times in a California prison in 1993. Example 5. Joe Colorado Campos, snitched in the 2010s, went into hiding. Who? Joe Colorado Campos, an enforcer for La M in the streets. What happened? After being arrested, he flipped and gave information about La M's drug and extortion networks. The consequences: a green light was put on him immediately. Outcome: he was placed in protective custody and disappeared from public view. If someone is suspected of cooperating with law enforcement, La M follows a strict process. 1. Checking the paperwork. They try to confirm snitching by obtaining court documents, police reports, or transcripts. 2. Interrogation. The accused may be confronted and questioned by other members. 3. No second chances. If evidence is found, a green light is issued immediately. 4. Execution methods. Inside prison, stabbings most common. On the streets, drive-bys, kidnappings, or execution-style shootings. Snitching is the ultimate betrayal in La M. It doesn't matter how high-ranking or respected you are. If you talk, you die. The rule is so strong that even the suspicion of snitching can get you killed. Rule number 8. The green light list. Enemies of La M must be eliminated. La M holds the ultimate power to place individuals or entire gangs on the green light list. A death sentence that means they can be attacked or killed on sight by Sureño gang members inside and outside prison. This rule reinforces absolute control by ensuring that anyone who disrespects or disobeys La M faces violent consequences. Who was the first Mexican Mafia member to be executed? Chino Flores, 1969. The first internal execution. Who? Alfonso Chino Flores, an original member of La M in the late 1960s. Why was he executed? He refused to follow orders and acted independently, threatening La M's control. What happened? He was stabbed to death in San Quentin prison in 1969, the first known MA-ordered execution of one of their own. Outcome: his death set a precedent. No one was untouchable. Who was the first gang to get the green light? Maravilla gangs, late 1990s, early 2000s. Why were they green-lit? Maravilla refused to pay taxes to La M. They openly challenged La M's authority by refusing to follow their rules. Some Maravilla members disrespected high-ranking MA figures. Outcome: Maravilla members were targeted in and out of prison by Sureños. Many were stabbed or killed, forcing the gang to stay isolated and weaker over time. To this day, Maravilla gangs are not considered Sureños and remain outside La M's structure. 1. They become open targets. Sureños are ordered to attack them on sight. 2. Prison becomes deadly. Members are isolated, attacked, or killed inside prison. 3. Street violence escalates. Any member seen outside can be shot or stabbed. 4. Some try to make peace. Some gangs negotiate to get off the list by agreeing to La M's terms. 5. Others are erased. If they can't survive the attacks, the gang loses power or disappears. Has any gang ever gotten off the green light list? Yes, but it's rare. Some gangs have negotiated their way off by paying large sums of money to La M, submitting completely to MA control, eliminating specific members that La M wanted gone. Example: Maravilla still remains green-lit to this day because they refused to submit. Meanwhile, some factions of 18th Street and MS-13 have worked their way back into La M's favor. The green light list is La M's most powerful tool for control. It ensures that disobedience is met with death, and no gang can challenge La M's authority without consequences. Rule number 9. Checking in. Respect the chain of command. One of the most important rules enforced by La M is that every Sureño gang and individual must check in with the proper authority before making any major moves, whether it's conducting business, initiating violence, or handling disputes. This rule guarantees control, discipline, and financial order across the vast network of Sureño gangs. Checking in depends on where you are and what you're trying to do. In prison, Sureños must check in with the shot caller, highest-ranking La M member in that facility. The key holder, a designated Sureño leader running day-to-day prison operations. If unsure, they check in with their car, group of Sureños from the same region. 2. On the streets, Sureño gang members check in with their gang representative, a direct link to La M. A tax collector who enforces La M's extortion rules. In some cases, they may receive direct orders from a La M member in prison via a trusted street enforcer. Failure to check in before acting, especially on matters involving money, violence, or disputes, can result in serious consequences, including being put on a green light list. Although La M isn't structured like a traditional gang, it has a clear chain of command that all Sureños must follow. Top-tier leadership, prison-based. The Godfathers. Rare, but exist. a handful of extremely high-ranking MA members who have been calling shots for decades. Example: Joe Pegleg Morgan was a key figure in La MA's early days. Senior carnales, brothers, OGs, with long-established influence inside and outside of prison. They give orders to key members and control major territories. High-ranking carnales. The backbone of La MA's power. Each oversees a specific region or prison facility. They communicate with street enforcers and tax collectors. Mid-tier leadership, prison and street operations. Shot callers, prison-based. The highest authority inside individual prison yards. Run day-to-day prison operations and make sure Sureños obey MA orders. Can issue green lights, discipline members, and handle disputes. Tax collectors, street-based, ensure that all Sureño gangs under La MA pay their taxes. If a gang refuses to pay, they report it up the chain, which could result in a green light. Key holders, prison-based, Sureños, who have earned respect and responsibility. They manage money, drugs, and weapons inside prison. Lower-tier leadership, street-level operations, Sureño gang leaders, street bosses. Control individual Sureño gangs in different cities. Handle drug sales, extortion, and enforcement on behalf of La MA. Representatives, liaisons, individuals who act as messengers between La MA in prison and the streets, often low profile, but extremely important. Hitmen, enforcers, carry out murders, green lights, and punishments. Can be anyone from young, ambitious Sureños to seasoned killers. Regular Sureños. Everyday soldiers who follow orders, pay taxes, and handle street-level crimes, failing to check in, or worse, making unauthorized moves, can have deadly consequences. Examples of consequences: violence without permission, a gang goes to war without IME's approval, green-lighted, attacked in prison. Refusing to pay taxes, a Sureño gang leader tries to avoid payment, beaten, extorted, or executed, breaking chain of command. A member bypasses their designated contact, labeled disrespectful, possibly attacked. Example: in the 2000s, a high-ranking Sureño in Los Angeles was ordered killed for making independent moves in drug trafficking without checking in with La MA first. Checking in is mandatory in La MA's world. It ensures discipline and order among Sureños, steady cash flow from taxes. All violence is controlled and authorized. Rule number 10. No cooperating with law enforcement. The ultimate betrayal. The Mexican Mafia, La MA, has a zero-tolerance policy for snitching. Any Sureño or MA member caught cooperating with law enforcement, whether it's talking to the police, testifying in court, or working as an informant, faces the death penalty. This rule is absolute because La MA survives on secrecy and fear. A single informant can bring down entire operations, expose high-ranking members, or weaken La MA's power. What counts as snitching? Providing information to police, even if it's something small, reporting crimes or naming suspects, is forbidden. Testifying in court, whether it's against another Sureño, La MA, or a rival, speaking in court is a death sentence. Working as an informant, becoming a CIA, confidential informant, for police or the FBI is considered the ultimate betrayal. Wearing a wire or recording conversations, any attempt to secretly record La MA business is punished. cooperating with gang injunctions, helping law enforcement enforce anti-gang laws is seen as treason. Once someone is suspected of cooperating, La M investigates. If confirmed, a green light is placed on them, and they are attacked or executed. Notable examples of La M members breaking this rule: Rene Boxer, Enriquez, high-ranking turncoat, 2000s. Who was he? A powerful La M member in the 1980s and 1990s, deeply involved in drug trafficking and violence. What did he do? After decades of loyalty, he turned informant in the early 2000s, exposing La M's inner workings. What was the outcome? He testified against La M members and gave law enforcement critical intelligence. Consequence: La M greenlit him for execution. He has been in protective custody ever since. Arturo Tablas Castellanos and the 2012 operation, who was he? A high-ranking La M figure who ran prison operations. What did he do? He was secretly cooperating with authorities while still acting as a powerful MA leader. What was the outcome? His betrayal led to a massive 2012 federal indictment against dozens of MA members. Consequence: his status was erased, and he's permanently marked as a traitor. The 1995 federal indictment, the first major betrayals. What happened? Several La M members, including high-ranking figures, flipped and testified in a federal case. Notable informants: Robert Robot Salas, former La M shot caller who provided extensive testimony. Michael Big Spider Mulhern helped law enforcement decipher coded messages. Outcome: dozens of La M members were convicted and given life sentences. Those who testified were placed in witness protection to avoid execution. The killing of Manuel Cranky Torres, 1980s. Who was he? A La M associate who was suspected of cooperating with police. What happened? EMI leaders suspected he was talking to law enforcement. A hit was ordered from prison. He was stabbed to death in 1986 as a warning to others. Outcome: this solidified La M's zero-tolerance policy on snitching. What happens to a snitch? If someone is suspected of cooperating, La M investigates. If confirmed, they face one immediate green light. They are marked for death. 2. Execution in prison. If they're inside, they're stabbed to death, often in public as an example. 3. Street retaliation. If they're on the streets, they may be hunted down and killed. 4. Protective custody or witness protection. Some informants flee and live in hiding forever. This rule is ironclad. No one, no matter how powerful, is immune. Even top-ranking La M members have been executed for cooperating. Rule No. 12. Discipline and conduct in prison. The code of survival. One of the most strictly enforced rules within La M's world is discipline and behavior in prison. Every Sureño must follow a strict set of rules regarding conduct, respect, and physical conditioning. Breaking these rules isn't just about getting punished, it's about survival. La M believes that Sureños are an extension of their power inside prison. So if a Sureño is sloppy, weak, or disrespectful, they make La M look bad, which can cost them their life. Sureños in prison must follow these unwritten laws at all times. Show respect at all times. Never disrespect La M, fellow Sureños, or the chain of command. Follow orders without question. If a shot caller or key holder gives an order, it must be followed immediately. No drug addiction. Using drugs is allowed, but getting addicted makes you weak, which is punishable. No gambling debts. Owing money you can't pay back is a death sentence. No sexual deviance. Any form of weakness, including sexual misconduct, is strictly forbidden. Stay physically fit. Every Sureño is expected to maintain strength and endurance at all times. No associating with enemies. No unnecessary interaction with black, white, or rival Latino gangs. No cooperating with guards or staff. Talking too much with correctional officers raises suspicion. Enforce discipline. Among Sureños, if a Sureño violates any rule, it's your responsibility to correct them. Sureños are expected to stay in top physical condition in case they need to fight, stab, or defend themselves at any moment. Daily routine includes burpees, hundreds per day, a core part of gang workouts. Push-ups and dips to maintain upper body strength, squats and lunges. Leg strength is crucial for fights, shadowboxing and cardio. Keeps reflexes sharp for attacks. Weapon training, practicing how to hide, grab, and use makeshift knives, shanks. Skipping workouts is a sign of weakness and can get you disciplined. If you can't fight, you're a liability, and liabilities get eliminated. If a Sureño sees another Sureño breaking the rules or disrespecting la M, they have two choices. 1. Correct it immediately. If it's a minor offense, bad posture, disrespectful tone, not following prison politics, they must check the person on the spot. 2. Report it to a shot caller. If the offense is serious, disrespecting a high-ranking member, questioning an order, stealing, they must report it to the higher-ups immediately. Failure to take action means you're just as guilty. If you witness disrespect and ignore it, you'll be disciplined too. If a Sureño is jumped, stabbed, or attacked by another race, the response is automatic. Immediate retaliation. All nearby Sureños must join the fight, no matter what. No questions asked. Even if the Sureño was in the wrong, you must back them up first and ask questions later. If you do nothing, you're a target. Any Sureño who stands by and doesn't fight is seen as weak and will face consequences. Example, prison riots. Many race riots in California. Prisons start because one Sureño is attacked and others immediately respond. This is why prisons separate races, to avoid automatic gang warfare. If a Sureño violates any of these prison codes, they can face warnings and discipline. A lower-level violation results in a beating from their own people as a lesson. Checking off the yard. If a Sureño is seen as weak, they might be forced to leave general population and go to protective custody, which is a form of exile. Execution. If a Sureño refuses to follow orders, is suspected of snitching, or commits a major violation, they will be green-lit for execution. Rule number 12 is about ensuring strength, unity, and obedience inside prison. Sureños are La M's foot soldiers, and any sign of weakness is not tolerated. Rule number 13, racial politics in the Mexican Mafia. One of the most rigid and dangerous aspects of prison life under the Mexican Mafia is the strict racial segregation enforced by La M. Sureños are required to align with their own race and respect the racial hierarchy that dominates prisons and the streets. La M enforces a strict separation between Latinos, blacks, and whites, and any violation of this rule can result in serious consequences. How the racial divide works in prison and the streets. Prison yards in California, where La M has the most power, are divided by race. Mexicans and Sureños, Latinos, controlled by La M. Whites, Aryan Brotherhood and Nazi lowriders, operate under their own leadership but are loosely allied with La M. Blacks, Bloods, Crips, Black Guerrilla Family, etc. Considered rivals, especially the Black Guerrilla Family, BGF. Others, Asians, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, etc., usually align with their own groups or stay neutral. The racial structure is simple. Stick to your own kind. No eating with other races, no working out with other races, no sharing commissary or protection, no friendships beyond necessary business. Breaking these racial boundaries can get you disciplined or killed. The Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood alliance. Despite the racial separation, La M has maintained a strong alliance with the Aryan Brotherhood, AB, since the 1970s. Why? Both groups share common enemies, Black Guerrilla Family and other black gangs. They assist each other in wars, riots, and prison operations. The AB has access to drugs and weapons that La M can use. However, this is strictly a business arrangement. Aryan Brotherhood members and Sureños don't mix socially. They only work together when necessary. Can a black guy become a Sureño? No. La M does not allow black members within Sureño gangs. Even if a black person grew up around Sureños, speaks Spanish, and is fully immersed in Mexican culture, they are still not accepted. Exceptions. In rare cases, a half-black, half-Mexican individual might be accepted if they look more Latino and prove extreme loyalty. But even then, they face extreme racism and scrutiny. If a black person falsely claims to be a Sureño, they are usually targeted. What happens if a Mexican guy was in a black gang? If a Mexican was formerly part of a black gang, such as Bloods, Crips, or the Black Guerrilla Family, they will immediately be questioned upon entering prison. Possible outcomes. If they renounce their past ties and prove loyalty to La M, they might be accepted as a Sureño. If they still show loyalty to black gangs, they could be seen as a threat or even targeted for elimination. Example: in the 1990s, Mexican gang members from neighborhoods dominated by black gangs had to choose a side in prison. Some were forced to attack former black allies to prove their loyalty to La M. What happens if you break the racial rules? If a Sureño is seen befriending, helping, or being too close with another race, there are consequences. First warning: a check, beating, from fellow Sureños as a warning, forced to prove loyalty by attacking another race. Second violation: could be stabbed or killed, especially if it's seen as an alliance against La M. Example: Mexican Crips in LA. Some Latino gang members in Los Angeles have joined black gangs like the Crips. However, if they enter prison, they are often forced to choose sides, and aligning with black gangs means they will never be accepted back by Sureños or La M. The racial divide is one of the strongest and most dangerous rules enforced by La M. Mexicans must stick with Mexicans, whites with whites, and blacks with blacks. These rules aren't just guidelines, they're law. In the world of the Mexican Mafia, breaking even one can mean your life is on the line. From collecting taxes to enforcing discipline, from racial politics to prison codes, La M has created a system of power that controls not just the streets, but entire prison yards. This is more than just a gang. It's an empire built on fear, loyalty, and blood. But here's the real question. Are these rules keeping Sureños strong? Or are they just another way to keep them trapped in a cycle of violence? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think these rules make sense? Or are they just another way for La M to hold power? And if you want a deep dive into the Mexican Mafia's biggest betrayals, green lights, or wars, hit that like button and subscribe, because there's a lot more to uncover. This is Real Crime Stories Daily, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay sharp.